Some chefs begin their careers by going to culinary school. Others, like John Leo of Los Angeles Michelin Bib restaurant Chifa, took a vastly different route. He tells his story and reveals his unexpected ties to Taiwan in this week's edition of Taiwan Talk.
I kind of took the scenic route to get to where I am today. I was at the Capital Group, which is investment management from a global firm, for about 27 years, starting in 1992. But I decided in 2018, after 26 years, to retire and do something else. And that something else kind of turned out to be chief of the restaurant.
Okay, it's a why a restaurant? Some people go fishing, some people open a bookstore, but why a restaurant?
Yeah, so I guess the retirement's sort of in quotes because it's not really, like retirement. But I think the brainchild of the restaurant was myself, my wife Rika, and her brother Umberto. Umberto Leon he's already a legend kind of within the fashion world. And I think at some point the planets kind of aligned with all three of us that, we wanted to do something that meant a lot to our family, and our family, both families, were really about food. We really love food and celebrating food and telling our story through food. And so we knew if we wanted to do something, it would be around food, and that what we wanted to get to was somewhere where we were going to have a big family meal anyways, and we're going to celebrate. And as we did this, we kept inviting more people into the sort of tent to do that. And at one point we said, hey, we're kind of doing this around the world, because we would do a lot of host fashion show, because he would have runway shows, and his mom, Wendy, and I would cook these big meals for the family, and then everybody in the fashion show, and everybody wanted to be a part of it. And we realized that was a really fun thing to do, and was just sort of extending our family. And at one point we just said, hey, instead of just doing this around the world, we would like find spaces, rent restaurants, out. Why don't we just have our own place and just have the same spirit of family, love, and food in a permanent place? And so when I retired, I think Umberto professionally and my wife, who's now in real estate, had this light bulb over her head and said, I think it's now kind of time. And with my retiring, I was, I did a lot of cooking. They said, you're free. We have a chef. Let's go to it.
Okay, so describe the cuisine at Chifa. I mean, like you're talking to essentially to Taiwanese Americans, you're talking to Taiwanese who do come to America. What's it like there?
What's it like? So what we want to achieve with Chifa is we're having a family dinner, and we're cooking things that we would cook for our family. So we're drawing from our family recipes. So recipes from my wife's side of the family and from my side of the family, which is Taiwanese. And so it has, Taiwanese, Peruvian, and Cantonese. My wife and her family went to Hong Kong, to Peru, to LA. And so you're going to get the experience of all of that. Our entire family sort of recipe book opened up. And that's where I kind of draw my inspiration for new dishes as well. So when you come, our goal is that you feel like you're just coming to our house for dinner. And each dish has a story. And so one of the dishes that I have among several that are Taiwanese is my dad's dan dan mian. So he passed that recipe down to me. And, he passed away in 2010. And so for me, having that noodle and his dishes there means that he continues to live on.
Okay. Would you consider your cooking to be fusion, or you just happen to be cooking with a whole bunch of dishes from Taiwan and from Peru sitting next to each other?
I would say it's more of the latter. I think a lot of people hear like Peruvian, Cantonese, Taiwanese, and they think fusion, but especially with the Peruvian food is already kind of fused with Chinese influence, because the Chinese went to Peru in the 1800s, to look for work, as Chinese do. They go, and so a lot of the dishes that you find that are traditional Peruvian dishes that we have, like lomo saltado, pollo a la brasa, that we serve at Chifa, were already fused decades ago by the Peruvian and Chinese that were in Peru. And then the other dishes like the Cantonese and Taiwanese are more traditional. And of course, the variations happen over time just because of the ingredients that are available, right? But I would say that, the things that I cook are drawn directly from the foods that my dad and my mom were raised with in Taiwan.
All right. So talk about your food influences. You mentioned your father's dan dan mian, right? What
Yes.
else influenced you growing up?
I think, and then again, I keep going back to my father, but my father, my yaya went over to Taiwan with Chiang Kai-shek, and he was an educator. In fact, he was the president of SIDA, the Taiwan Teachers College. And so he raised my father as with an iron fist. You're going to go into the professional trade. You're going to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer. So he was an engineer. But my father, really, his passion, if you look back on it, it was really food and film. And I think if he were growing up today, he would be a food influencer. And so through his job as an engineer, he traveled around the world through Europe and things like that. So not only did he kind of influence me on the food that he grew up with in Taiwan, wherever he traveled, he would bring food back. And then that would kind of drive my interest and go, oh, what is this? So he introduced me to European food, Latin food. And so I kind of continue to draw on things that I remember him kind of introducing me to. So that is one thread. The other thread happens to be because I grew up in the 70s, I'm a child of television. So I grew up when television was flourishing, and PBS for me, my parents thought it was a good way for me to learn about the country, to learn English. But on PBS, it was also the cooking channels. So Julia Childs, Martin Yan Can Cook, a lot of those. So a lot of those shows influenced me in learning more about food. And some of those shows, it was about the history. They taught history along with the recipe and how to find ingredients where you were. So that, to me, is a lot of the fun and the inspiration to driving cooking is the hunt for getting to the most authentic thing possible where you are. That was a bit of a roundabout, but I would say that, it was my parents, my father, and then growing up and being connected to the sort of media world of food. I think the timing of those converged and just sort of drives what I think.
But you don't have a professional culinary background as such, right? What you bring to the table is the skills that you learned in your own kitchen with your dad and your brother-in-law and your wife, right?
Yes, and my mother-in-law. And so my mother-in-law, she had a restaurant, Chifa, in Peru. And she comes from a family that is almost all chefs, professional Chinese chefs. They're from China, so they came to Lima, to the United States through the traditional chefs. So I was exposed to a lot of that when I married Rika. So I got a lot of that training there. I also, when I was 17, my first job was at McDonald's too. So what I drew from that was an understanding of the business part and the operational part, because McDonald's is a great place to learn about the logistics and the business of how to operate an efficient restaurant. So my training was informal, but a combination of people that were already in that world. And I think today a lot of YouTube is very helpful as well.
I haven't gone to your restaurant. I will do that when I come back to LA next time. But walk me through the menu. What do people generally order when they get to Chifa, and what draws them back?
So our signature dishes are, again, it's amalgamation of the different places, Peru, Cantonese, Taiwanese, and it's really diverse. And I think when you first go in, you try a little bit of every type of cuisine, and the flavors are very memorable. I like cooking so that people really feel the food and they can feel the love that we put into it. And so, like lomo saltado from the Peruvian and the dan dan mian, there's a xiao chicken, the Cantonese one. Those are our top three dishes that people come for. And then, they will have that. But our menu is pretty extensive. I mean, it's not hundreds, but there's a lot. So that when they come, then they see other dishes, then they come back and they go, I want to try some of the other stuff. So, we made sure that we have recipes that quite extensive that we haven't put on, but we pick the ones that kind of give everyone a pretty good sample of what our family is about. And these are things that we would cook, for ourselves. A lot of the dishes we raised our kids on. So I think a lot of the things that people find that there's something for everybody, and the children and the kids love the food. So another reason is that they found a place that their kids love to eat. And I think one of the greatest compliments that we can get is we find that there are kids that come, when I say kids, I mean 20, 30-year-olds, and they're Chinese, whatever their background is. And then the next time they come back and they bring their parents or their grandparents, because they go, this passes the test. Right?
Okay.
Those things draw them back.
Oh, okay. This might sound like a weird question, but I'm hoping you'll walk me through this again. When I'm planning a menu, when I'm planning a dinner party, right, I generally look for a common thread that brings all the dishes together, right? So it may not necessarily be one ingredient, but it'll be like a theme. It'll be like an idea, right? What do you think strings these three cuisines together so you're not facing down basically a meal with flavors that clash, if that makes any sense? Could you walk me through that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think the three cultures, I mean, it's all about family for us, right? That's always going to be the theme. And with the culture, those cultures already have a very strong family culture involved. And for me, the three cuisines are also probably the most diverse in terms of flavors and techniques.
Okay, so what are your dreams for the restaurant? Where do you want to take Chifa? I mean, you obviously expanded at a rate that you were happy with, and you obviously grew at a rate you were happy with, and now it's hit the point where people are talking about it. It's creating a buzz. What would you like? Where would you like to take this?
So again, going back to what we want to achieve is we really want our people to feel that Chifa is a place that everyone belongs, that the food is approachable, the environment is somewhere where you can celebrate with Chinese food, that it's elevated, it's healthy. My brother-in-law designed the space. It's a place you could be proud of. And we also want it to serve as a place where people who are not familiar with Chinese food or Peruvian food, as a place that we get to introduce them to that flavor. So that's kind of what we like to stand for. And so, that's kind of the brand. And if we can find a way to kind of grow that in different ways, that's kind of what we would like. And that could take different forms. I'd mentioned, McDonald's before as sort of a place where it tutored me in terms of how to run the restaurant. I think my wife, Rika, who, in addition to kind of being CEO of the restaurant, she also has a real estate investment company. And so, sort of in the footsteps of the McDonald's folks, we also like to see it as, I don't know if you saw the movie The Founder, but McDonald's is really a real estate company that happens to burgers.
Okay.
So if we get it, expanded from a business standpoint, that would be great. But the other reason we opened Chifa 2 for us is that I mentioned that Rika and I homeschooled our kids. And partially, we were selfishly hoping that we had a place for our kids to learn. Our thinking is that when you homeschool, the world is your classroom and the timeline is forever. And so there's no better place than a restaurant to, one, understand the immigrant story, to develop a good work ethic, to get a good taste of how businesses run and develop interpersonal skills, whether it's the team that is working in the restaurant or meeting new people as guests and wanting to create that feeling people want to be part of our family. That's really what we wanted. That's what we're about. And so whatever we grow in whatever direction, we want that Chifa to be a place where people feel like they're part of the family. Everyone can learn. The idea of self-development is not only for our kids, but the people that work with us. So that's kind of what we want to achieve. So those three things, we always see it as sort of an extension of those values and goals.
You were listening to John Leo of Chifa, a Los Angeles Michelin Bib restaurant. I'm Hope Go. Thank you for tuning in.